Yo, what's good? Welcome into the show. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr., and no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, we appreciate you for making today's show a part of your day. On the Eagles Now rundown for this episode, a Mel Kiper mock draft reaction. We're going to take a look at who the ESPN NFL draft analyst has the Birds taking in the first two rounds of the NFL draft. First, I want to start with this, and I want to gauge where the audience is at. The peak of NFL free agency has certainly died down. Howie Roseman, busy as always. Some people out there like the NFL draft more than NFL free agency. I like both of them because it's a lot of fun to be on this post in the position that I'm in, talking about the Birds. It's a great job to have. It's a dream job for me to have. There's no doubt about that. Producer Chip, he's right with me on that sentiment, but I want you to like the video if you're excited to see what Howie Roseman is going to do in the NFL draft, and let's gauge how many people are pumped up for the end of this month and which players are going to be future Philadelphia Eagles. To the Mel Kiper mock draft reaction here, and I want you to look ahead, end of April, draft coming at you, Detroit. We'll be live every single day, every single pick right here on the channel. And I want you to remember this here, how the top five goes could impact what happens with Philadelphia later in the first round. Currently, they're slated at 22 overall. But QB's going off the board early. What does it do, essentially? It allows quality players to slide down the draft board, and those players could fall to Philadelphia, or the Eagles could be within range to trade up for a player that they really covet. And in Mel Kiper's latest mock draft, check out how many quarterbacks he has going inside the top five. Four of the first five picks here, all signal callers, all quarterbacks. Caleb Williams, number one to the Bears. That's not a surprise. There is growing buzz that maybe the Commanders are not going to go with Drake May and instead draft the Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels out of LSU, which then in turn allows Drake May to fall to number three, where the New England Patriots get their franchise quarterback hopeful. Marvin Harrison Jr., the first non-quarterback off the board to the Arizona Cardinals. Jonathan Gannon and company desperately need a top-tier wideout for Kyler Murray. And then he has the Vikings trading up to number 5 in a deal with the Los Angeles Chargers to make a splash here and take J.J. McCarthy, national championship winning quarterback out of Michigan, who I think is a little bit raw. But maybe they sit him behind Sam Darnold and they allow him that easy runway to then become the starter in 2025 or beyond. If the draft goes like that, like Mel Kiper is predicting, it's great news for the Philadelphia Eagles for the reasons that I talked about, because some of those upper echelon players fall and slide down the draft board, which is great news for Howie Roseman and this front office. Other notable picks here prior to the Eagles selecting at 22 overall. Brock Bowers, tight end out of Georgia, going to the Jets at number 10. That makes a lot of sense. Robert Saleh has an obsession with building up the defensive side of the football. If they bring in another offensive weapon, though, for Aaron Rodgers, that team very, very scary because, let's face it, that defense is already in a good spot after they traded for Hassan Reddick with all of the other players that they have. Quinion Mitchell off the board to the Denver Broncos at number 12. Quinion Mitchell, Patrick Surtain, 1-2 cornerback punch. Could Denver build up the defense in that way? Talis Fuaga, offensive lineman, Oregon State, going to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders desperately need to fortify the trenches. Cooper DeJean, after his great pro day in which his athletic testing numbers were off the charts, he goes to the Jags at number 17. And then Laiatu Latu, edge rusher out of UCLA, to the Los Angeles Rams at number 19. These are all players here who the Eagles have interest in, have top 30 visits with, or they're appealing to Philadelphia in the way that Brock Bowers is. Now let's go to the Eagles here at number 22. What does Mel Kiper have the Birds doing? Clemson cornerback Nate Wiggins. Some of you watching right now are going to be very excited about that selection. Other people watching are not going to like this pick. But Nate Wiggins certainly has a lot of potential. He is a blazing fast cornerback who ran a 4.3 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, has a knack for making plays on the football. He can go step for step with some of the quicker and some of the best overall wide receivers at the NFL level if he continues his ascent. The weakness to his game, he has an extremely small frame, and it's going to be really difficult for him to add muscle and add weight because the frame kind of is what it is at this point. And because he's a little bit slight, he does struggle to make tackles in the run game and struggles to hold his own in the run game and shed some of those blockers. Also, you have some concern if you were to get matched up with the physical specimen at the wide receiver spot like an A.J. Brown, who might beat him at the line with that overall physicality. But Wiggins' numbers in 2023 were really good. What he's been able to do throughout his NFL career, very impressive. Overall Pro Football Focus grade of 82.5, a coverage grade of 83.9. He only allowed a completion rate when targeted of 43.9% and a passer rating when targeted of 44.4%. Some solid quarterbacks in the ACC, so those numbers certainly stand out to you. He can play man, he can play zone. Vic Fangio is going to mix and match a lot of that. Man coverage grade of 78.5, zone coverage grade of 74 flat, 7 pass breakups, 2 picks. And then you look at the overall resume in 3 years with Clemson. Only 4 games played in 2021, but 13 played in 2022 with 13 pass breakups. That's really where he started to catch the attention of a lot of NFL draft evaluators and a lot of teams that were looking at him coming out of the draft a year later in the 2023-2024 cycle. And then this past year, the numbers that we just broke down for you. So what say you? Do you like Mel Kiper's pick of Nate Wiggins to the Eagles at number 22? I want you to type L for like, D for dislike. Sound off with your opinions down in the comment section right now. Today's Philadelphia Eagles Now is sponsored by Game Time. It is the best app if you're looking for the best seats at the lowest price guaranteed at the last possible moment. And what's great about the Game Time app is that prices drop as the event gets closer and you get in the door with the lowest price guaranteed. And I always think it's important to put together some lifelong memories with people who you really care about. You're able to do that by going to some sporting events. And if you're looking for tickets to a sporting event, you can find them. Philadelphia Phillies game, Philadelphia 76ers game, Citizens Bank Park, one of the most beautiful ballparks in all of Major League Baseball. And as you can see here to my right, to get into the door for Pirates Phillies this upcoming weekend at CBP after the Phillies took 2 of 3 from the Nationals, 2 of 3 from the St. Louis Cardinals. Kind of on a roll now, catching their stride, although the bats need to get going, but they will once the temperatures warm up. And then some Philadelphia 76ers playoff games also going to be available too. Eagles tickets, Phillies tickets, Sixers tickets, but also if you like to go to concerts, you like to go to comedy shows, theater events, they have it all. $20 off, a fantastic deal. Thanks to our friends at Game Time. We're going to put this link down below in the comment section as well as in the description of this video. We really appreciate them for making today's show possible. Do we have Mel Kiper's reaction to taking Nate Wiggins? Is that the quote that we have potentially there, Chip? If not, we can move on to who the Eagles take at number 50 overall. All right, let's go to the Eagles selection with the 50th overall pick. And this is something that we've been talking about a lot here. The Eagles have 3 picks inside the top 53. 22, 50, 53. They are going to go with an offensive lineman at some point with their first couple of picks here. And here, Mel Kiper doesn't have the Eagles going offensive lineman round 1, which increasingly I think they might do, but they do go offensive line, in particular offensive tackle, with the 50th overall pick with the Houston juggernaut in Patrick Paul. Here's what Mel Kiper had to say about Patrick Paul. Philadelphia is another team that could benefit from this talented offensive tackle class. If it goes defense in round 1, it might still be able to find a future offensive tackle starter right here at 50. Paul could serve as a swing tackle as a rookie, as Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson entrenched as the starters. Johnson, however, has dealt with nagging injuries in recent years, so acquiring depth is important. Paul started 39 games at left tackle for the Cougars. If you're wondering what Mel Kiper said about Nate Wiggins. He said, Philadelphia's defense fell apart at the end of last year. Top corners Darius Slay, James Bradbury in their 30s. It's time to add an injection of youth in the secondary. Wiggins surrendered just one completion of 20-plus yards in 2023 and has outstanding speed, a 4.28 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. A 4.3 average is what Wiggins was able to do. Going back to Patrick Paul here, the value of Paul dropping to number 50, I think is really good value for the Eagles here. And Mel Kiper even said that. If you don't go offensive tackle in round 1, you could still get a pretty solid player at 50. Also, keep this in mind. 50 and 53, you package those picks, maybe you can get to the mid-40s. Maybe you can get to the 40th overall pick to take a player who you really like at that spot. Paul, great size, 6'7", 331 pounds, 36.25-inch arms. So that's ideal arm length for a tackle that you want on the outside. And at that size, he ran a 5.13 40-yard dash. His weaknesses, he plays a little bit high, so if a defensive lineman's able to get good leverage, he can sometimes get uprooted, but you always have confidence that Jeff Stoutland is going to be able to bring the best out of the player. As for his Pro Football Focus grades in 2023, overall grade of 81.1, he only gave up 1 sack, 1 hit, 7 hurries, and 3 penalties. An agile athlete who's able to move really well. Eagles back on the board a couple of picks later at 53, and I like the philosophy, the overall philosophy here from Mel Kiper. Cornerback is the biggest need on this roster, in my opinion. Offensive line depth, and then a future offensive tackle is right there. And I've said it for a long time, I'd like to see Philadelphia get a legit young wide receiver to pair along A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. That's kind of what Kiper is thinking here with his philosophy, where the Eagles go with Jalen Polk, right? Was it Jalen Polk out of Washington? And I think the Eagles need a wide receiver next to Brown and Smith. Now, what's interesting is that Rome Odunze is going to be a top 10 pick, I think. Jalen McMillan is the other Washington wide receiver who actually, in Kiper's mock, goes a couple of picks before his other teammate in Jalen Polk. Goes to show you how stacked this Washington roster was in 2023. Big reason why they made it to the national championship. Here's what Kiper had to say about Jalen Polk. That's right, a third Huskies wideout in the top 2 rounds. Polk is a big play threat who averaged 17 yards per catch in his final 2 college seasons. He put up 1,159 receiving yards with 9 scores in 2023, with Michael Penix throwing him the rock, by the way. Did most of his damage on deep balls. I already addressed the Eagles' issues at corner and offensive tackle, which means they could add to their pass-catching core with this selection. Polk has good size. He has good length. He is a sizable target. He does need to refine his route running. He can learn a little bit of that from A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. 2 strengths to their game. And he can also do a better job of finishing in traffic. You know, he has that size, but sometimes he plays a little bit smaller than that size. So when things get muddy downfield, sometimes he can struggle to pull down the football. You look at his production over the last 2 years, really burst onto the scene as a bona fide superstar in 2023. In 2022, a solid season, no doubt. 41 catches, 694 yards, 16.9 yards per catch. So when Mel Kiper says he's a big play threat, 16.9 yards per catch in 2022, 16.8 in 2023, he's combined for 15 receiving touchdowns the last 2 years. The drop number's not bad by any estimation. 2 years ago for this past year. And then this year, those 69 catches, very nice. More than 1,100 yards. And those numbers are very, very solid. So that's Mel Kiper's mock draft here for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I like it to a certain degree as far as the players selected, where the value is. I'd have no problems with Wiggins going 22. Patrick Paul, very good value at 50. And then you go wide receiver there at 53 overall. How do you think Kiper did? A, B, C, D, or F? Let me know.